you know, how these things happen.
Yeah.
But
I hear what you're saying. I think I can read between the lines there.
yeah.
Let's move on. Before we get to Jake, let's move on to probably the biggest topic about you, and that's your situation with Laurel. What was your status with Laurel before the show? What was it during, and what is it now?
Before the show, me and Laurel broke up. We had been broke up for 8 months. I believe we broke up in July or August. And but you know, we remained friends. I've known Laurel for 7 years, and we dated for 3. And her mom is a very well-known designer in Austin. She designs like custom homes and condos and things like that. And I had a construction company, and we built some of the homes for her. So I had a working relationship with her mom. You know, I dated her daughter. We had things between us that, you know, we couldn't get over, like our belief system, you know, the things that we believed in, how we wanted to live, where we wanted to live, how we wanted to raise children. And they were very, very different. So we decided, hey, you know, we love each other, but we're better off being friends. And so we've been broke up for a while. During the show, we were broke up. After the show, we're still broke up. I talk to her every now and again. I mean, she's called me a few times because she's been getting threatening phone calls because people have taken her phone number and posted it on the internet. She's been getting calls from all over the U.S. and Canada. I feel really sorry for her, and I asked one of the producers for The Bachelorette not to use her name. I said, look, you can make up whatever story you want. You can actually take me, put me on a tree, and crucify me, and do whatever you want, but just don't bring her into it. If you're going to say I have a girlfriend, don't mention any name. And they're like, no, we're going to mention her name. It's already done. And I was like, people are going to find out who she is. And they're like, no, she's not. We're not giving her last name or her address. Nobody's going to know. I said, trust me. It's not going to be hard to tie her with me because we dated for so long.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the next day, People Magazine found her. And now people are calling her business. It's disrupting her business. They're blowing her cell phone up. They're leaving. She got a phone call today from some guy, I'm sorry, it was on Facebook, some guy saying, hey, look, I know where you work. I mean, this is ridiculous. They you know, these guys from The Bachelorette have gone way too far.
Yeah, that does suck. And I will get to Laurel a little bit later. And in fact, right now, I want to bring in this whole thing about Jake and what Jake said to you. He went at you pretty hard, not only during the show, but even afterwards. He claims that you and Laurel were in on this together. You decided to cool off so you could go on the show to promote your music, and now you are back together. And I want to read you the exact quote that what Jake said, and I'll have you respond. He said in his post-exit interview last week, after he was booted, so this would have been last Thursday, he said Wes and Laurel had an agreement, and this came from Wes. They had an agreement that they were going to put their relationship kind of on the back burner so that he could go on there and sell CDs. I think Wes's motivation is to move CDs. The guy's smart. He's real quick on his feet. He shouldn't have even been on there. It's hard for me to be real sympathetic about the situation because I know 100% that he and Laurel are together and they were together during the show. I think it's all an act, and I think Laurel's in cahoots with him. End quote. That's what Jake said last week. And your response to that?
Well, what's Jake supposed to say? I mean, Jake came on the TV show, and number one, he was crying. It was almost the worst acting job I've ever seen in my entire life. He went back on the TV show, and I'm gonna give you a quote from one of the other guys. I can't give you his name, but he called me. He was on the show with me, and he was like, Wes, what's the deal? And with Jake, or with you, did you have a girlfriend? And I was like, no. He said, why did Jake go back? This was after that episode. And I said, dude, I don't know. And he said, I'll tell you what Jake told me. Jake told me that the Lord told him that he was going to be on 7 shows when he went on that episode, and he got kicked off on the 6th one. So he knew that he had to go back. Also, another thing that they didn't show you when me and him were, confronting each other was he told me that he had been on bended knee praying about this for days, and that God told him to come back and tell Jillian that I was going to break her heart. So, a lot of people might not see these things about Jake. Another thing that he openly admitted in front of every single one of the guys that were on the show and the producers, and I can't believe they didn't play any of this stuff about Jake and any of the guys talking about the situation. He went out on a date with Jillian.
Yeah.
And on a group date, and Jillian said, Jake, you don't have to always be so perfect. I want you to be yourself. He comes back that night, and he's pretty upset. And he's like, guys, my whole life I've been too perfect. You know, every girl I've ever dated has broken up with me because I'm too perfect. He's like, I'm tired of being so perfect. And so, you know, these different things coming out of his mouth make me believe that Jake's a few pancakes short of a stack, number one. And I don't think that his credibility is worth anything, because he told me straight to my face when we were sitting in the hot tub, he said, Wes, the reason I'm on this show is because I want America to fall in love with me, and I want to be the next bachelorette or bachelor.
Yeah.
So, you know, he had a motive to be on that show as well, and his motive is to be the good guy. He's trying to stay in the spotlight. You know, he's already caused all the controversy about me having a girlfriend. He came back on another episode. What's he supposed to say? Is he supposed to say, hey, look, I was just playing. It was a joke.
Yeah.
You know, we're friends. Everything's cool now. No, you know, when people start a lie, they have to stick with it.
Well, I mean,
and that's kind of how I feel about it.
And I hear you on that. And to go into one of my pet peeves, and everybody is entitled to their own religious beliefs, and they can believe what they want to believe, but
right.
One of my pet peeves has always been, and being a huge sports fan myself, is when after a big win, the post-game interviewer goes up to the athlete after the game, and immediately the first thing out of their mouth is, we won because God wanted us to. And that is the biggest crock of God does not care who wins the Super Bowl. I'm sorry.
Right.
He does not care, and God certainly didn't care that Jake had to tell Jillian about you and some girl. I'm guessing. I haven't had a conversation with God about this, but I'm guessing he doesn't give a crap.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because I was kind of thinking, that's how me and Jake, we hit it off in the beginning. I mean, even though we're so different, like he's such kind of a cookie cutter kind of guy, and I'm kind of a real edgy guy. But we came together because of our religious beliefs. I mean, I went to Bible school out of high school and actually worked for a ministry for a while. And Jake's preacher, or his pastor, because he said his church signed him up for the show, used to come to our Bible school in Columbus, Texas, and give seminars. So that's how me and Jake kind of came together, because we did have the same belief. But you know, when people start manipulating their religious belief, and God told me this, and you know, it really turns me off as well, because God has no favoritism in the first place.
Yeah.
He would never do something like that. For somebody to say that makes me think they're a little kooky. I've got a saying, you know, some people are so heavenly minded that they're no earthly good, and that's kind of how Jake comes off sometimes.
The other thing I wanted to talk about that he said in his post-exit interview, and just refute this or what he says, he is quoted as saying, you know, he spoke with you on more than 3 occasions during, you know, time off camera. He says, quote, you told him, quote, Jake, I've got a girlfriend. I don't know what to do. And he responded with, Wes, are you in love with her? Because if you're not in love with her, you may fall in love with Jillian. You said, no, Jillian is not the girl for me, end quote. Did that conversation ever take place?
You know, not to my knowledge. The only thing that I ever told Jake was, because we spent some time together, and he was like, what kind of girl are you looking for? And I was like, you know, I want somebody who's going to be my best friend. That's the most important thing to me. And we got into when was your last relationship and this and that. And I told him, I said, look, my last relationship was about 8 months ago. I said, we're still very good friends. Matter of fact, she's one of my best friends. And that was as far as it went. I mean, we talked about it. He was like, well, why did y'all break up? I said, fundamentally, we didn't believe the same things. And he was like, well, Wes, you can work through things like that. I mean, and I was like, well, no, we can't. But we're still very good friends. And who knows, one day, if things don't work out, you know, with me and Jillian, because let's be honest with ourselves, Jillian's dating 30 different guys. I have no guarantee that she's going to pick me. And I was like, you know, Jake, one day we might get back together. I don't know what the cards hold, but as for now, we're not together. And I think Jake just took everything that I said sincerely and just ran with it and twisted it for his